And this brings us to perhaps the most important topic for the day, which is dissonance. In second species, as you already noticed, we have the option to use dissonance, but there are very specific rules that you must follow in using dissonances. The first is that a dissonance can only be used as a passing tone. And a passing tone is simply a note which fills in the space of a third. So, for instance, you see we have F down to D. That E is a passing tone um, and is therefore permitted to be used as a dissonance. If you went from the F down to the E and then back up to the F, that would not be a permissible use of dissonance. So it's a stepwise motion filling in the gap of a third. That is when you can use a dissonance. The other point that's very important to note is that you can only use a dissonance on the weak portion of the bar. So it can only be in the second half of the bar. Strong beats must be consonant. So in a minute we're going to work through a couple of exercises, but first I wanted to take a minute to summarize what we've talked about today. One of the first and one of the most important things we talked about is this idea of metrical hierarchy that's created by these half notes. So we have the strong and the weak portion of the bar. We talked about perfect consonances and also leaps and how our treatment of those two elements has evolved in second species. We also talked about dissonance and the use of dissonance in second species, which is completely new, and the need to use dissonance only as passing tones and on weak beats of the bar. Finally, just like first species, in second species we have a certain number of prescribed ways we can begin and end our counterpoint example. So we discussed those as well. And so now it's time to do an error detection. What I suggest is you pause the screen and take a minute to copy this example down, and then first label all of the intervals. And remember, you don't need to specify major or minor or perfect intervals, just write 8, 3, 6, for instance. You may want to specify diminished intervals just so that you are aware that they're there. After that, I would take a second to look at the beginning and the end of the example, and also to look at the melody of the counterpoint. Finally, look at your dissonances and your perfect intervals to see if they are treated appropriately. So here's the solution. And as you can see, there are a number of dissonances that have not been treated as passing tones. They've all been circled. Also, one thing that I didn't mention earlier is that unisons are permitted in second species, but only on weak beats. And I would limit the number per exercise because the voices lose their independence when you start to incorporate too many unisons. The counterpoint melody should still ideally recover large leaps, and it doesn't do so all the time, as you can see here. And in the middle of the exercise, there is some voice crossing. Notice that the treble clef has a little 8 at the bottom of it, so it's read an octave below. So that, of course, is still an issue, as is the occasional leaps across the bar line. They're not horrible, but just remember to limit them. There's some parallel perfect intervals again, and the exercise ends incorrectly. So do look over that error detection and the solution carefully and make sure that those errors all make sense to you. And if they do not, please post to the discussion board to get some more clarification. In the meantime, take a minute to write down this canis firmus and try writing a second species counterpoint above it. I will later today post a little tutorial about how to do that. So that's it for now. I'll do my best to get that other segment to you today. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy the snow day. Your homework, which was due today, will be due on Friday, and also your homework that was due on Friday will still be due on Friday. That's it. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.